talks began in the Qatari capital, Doha, there were multiple attacks in Afghanistan. The government says that there were Taliban attacks in 18 provinces on Saturday. The Taliban says there were 10 government assaults. Well, despite these accusations, the two parties are being urged to seize an opportunity to secure peace for future generations. Tens of thousands of Afghan civilians have died during decades of conflict in the country. Osama bin Javed spoke with a member of the Afghan negotiating team in Doha.
Both delegations led by the Afghan government side and the Taliban side have met the Emir of Qatar. There are intra-delegation talks which are scheduled, but right now both of these delegations are deciding who is going to be meeting whom. And to discuss that further, we have with us one member of the delegation, Mrs. Habiba Sarohi. Thank you very much for being with us. Describe to us how hopeful are you that these talks are going to yield some results, and what is going to be the future plan of action?
Thank you. We are here to have this talk and discussion. That's why this is the reason that we came along from Afghanistan to Doha for this talk. And then the people of Afghanistan desire for that talk and looking forward to this talk could be happen. And also now we have the support of all the international community, all the country and the region, that this talk should be happen. So that's why we do have hope for that. And the result, of course, it's a long way to go, and we will have a long discussion. And also, of course, it will be not very easy. It's a bumpy road, but we will see the result.
Your delegation has decided it's going to be a 6-member contact committee, which is going to be meeting with the Taliban first, setting out the agenda, and on Monday is going to be the first day probably of these intra-Afghan dialogue.
I think so. Yeah, tomorrow, which is Monday, the two delegations from both sides, the delegation from both sides will sit together and talk about some code of conduct, the procedure, rule and procedure, and also the agenda, setting the agenda.
How hopeful are you? Because as a woman member of the delegation, somebody who's representing one of the many minorities in Afghanistan, do you think that after 20 years, nearly 20 years of conflict, you will be able to convince the Taliban to give up violence and listen to you for what you want?
There is no further reason that both sides should continue for war and for conflict. We have to sit together to talk. There is no solution for that. The best solution, the better solution is to sit together to talk politically our issue, our problem, and also putting our idea and agenda at the table and talk about that and to get some result of that.
But you see that this is a very difficult situation. Even today, the Afghan government is saying there have been more than 18 attacks in the last 24 hours in various provinces. The Taliban is saying that there is a propaganda campaign that is being run against them. So there is a lack of trust, and it seems to be quite wide on both sides. How are you going to be able to bridge that?
There is lack of trust. Of course, it's common for every peace talk, every peace negotiation. This lack of trust can be happen. But unfortunately, of course, there is no evidence from Taliban side to say that it's a propaganda, because we have the evidence. We have the fire that happened to the area, or the blasting, or conflict. But anyway, we have yesterday we've got some positive gesture. It can be a step forward for building the trust. We have to build the trust. I think here in Qatar also we have to do some gesture, or to show some positive, to take some positive step for building the trust.
Thank you very much for speaking to us. And there you have it. This is the view from the Afghan delegation that, yes, there has been violence, that there might continue to be violence, but they're hopeful that this level of trust that does not exist between them is going to be built. As contact groups begin the negotiations, the intra-Afghan dialogues without international interlocutors, we've been hearing from diplomats saying that they're still here, they're still supporting it, but from a backseat. It is going to be weeks and months before this could yield results, but both sides are hopeful that this is a first step in the right direction.
Well, the U.S. Special Representative for Afghanistan Reconciliation, Zameh Khalilzad, spoke with our programme Talk to Al Jazeera. He described how much is at stake if Afghan leaders squander this opportunity to achieve peace. Here's part of that exclusive interview.
A serious error was made at the end of the Soviet period. Actually, it's more than one error, but one was not to try to do what we're doing now with Afghan forces, the Mujahideen who fought the Soviets and the other Afghans, to get to a political agreement, to have negotiations like the one that started here yesterday among Afghans, so that as the withdrawal was being carried out by the Soviet forces, there was order, an agreement, and a political process among the forces in play. So, that was because of lack of trust between the United States and the Soviet Union at that time. Many people didn't think the Soviets were serious about withdrawal. But also, the Afghans made sacrificed so much to push the Soviets out, to force them out, and the world benefited from that Soviet departure and what followed that departure, which is the disintegration of the Soviet Union. But the Afghans won a great victory at huge cost, failed politically by going to civil war against each other. I hope the Afghans are paying attention, learning the lessons of that period. We certainly have learned that lesson, and that's why we've started this peace process to get the Afghans to negotiate. That's why I call it a historic opportunity to avoid another historic mistake, which many Afghans admit happened as the Soviets were withdrawing and afterwards. A lot is at stake, first and foremost, for the Afghans, for the Afghan people. As I said, they're suffering every day. They're tired of the war. I mean, Afghans are killing each other right now. As I said, thank goodness, in our own case, it isn't happening. So I just don't think the Afghan people will understand the leaders who will, either Talib or the government, if they lose this opportunity. I think they would not be true to their people if they did that. So I think they feel that pressure. They feel that pressure, that yearning that is there for peace. But they are also under pressure from us. They're also under pressure from other international players. We're watching them. We're going to monitor these negotiations. And we'll help if that help is needed. But ultimately, now we're in a different phase in which the Afghans are in the seat. They can't blame the United States. They can't blame others. They are eyeing each other, eyeing the current generation's losses that they are suffering, the aspirations and the circumstances of future generations of Afghans, not to lose this opportunity, but to rise and take advantage of this historic opportunity. And if they do, the United States wants to assure Afghanistan that we would be a good partner. We want a good legacy behind in Afghanistan, and that we would like to see this war end.